the articles and whatnot, they talk about the nostalgia and the myths and magic that people shroud baseball in. And having been on a baseball field and having been on some really nice baseball fields, there's just something, to me, magical about that.
Hello, and welcome to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Chasen, and like always, I'll be joined today by the team that brings you cupofteacritiques.com. Here, we'll dive deep into the productions and topics we broach on our website, so you can decide for yourself if they're your cup of tea. Ready for a deep look with a deep brew? This week's topic, play ball! The love and appeal of baseball movies. Cup of Tea Critiques is a family affair, and I'm here with my brother Chris, my mother Reba, and my father Terry. It's always funny to me that as soon as the football season ends, it's like you hear pitchers and catchers report, and mornings just seems like the sun is shining brighter. The birds seem to be like singing their songs in a much more melodious manner. And I swear I instantly, the Super Bowl is on Sunday, and on Monday, I'm cracking up and picking up my favorite baseball movies right away. It's something about February. It's something about the game of baseball that I just love it. That when this time of year comes around and when I hear pitchers and catchers report, I have to pull up every single baseball movie I know, and I pretty much spend all of spring training watching every single one that I can, and sometimes watching them twice. It does not matter how many years I've been doing this. Like Major League is almost 40 years old. I have watched it for almost 40 years, and I will still watch it every single year. And so I wanted us to take just for an episode, I wanted to just kind of touch on our love affair for baseball games, some of our favorites, and maybe talk a little bit as to why we think they are so appealing, despite the fact that they have changed and we've seen a decrease in the number that have been released. So that's where I'm at, and I mean,
days are getting longer too.
They are. I know that's a big thing for you, Dan. Like,
yeah, definitely. Nothing you said, Brandon, surprises me. That you, when the pitchers and catchers report that you start watching baseball movies and you watch them twice, sometimes 3 times, it does not surprise me at all. You've always been fanatical about baseball.
Well, it's still a little too early for me generally when pitchers and catchers report, but yeah, I do start turning the page because we root for a professional basketball team that hasn't really been all that good for most of the last 30 years. So when it gets to later in the NBA season, we're generally looking to baseball. But I should also say it's funny to me that pitchers and catchers report before everybody else, and pitchers still can't throw the ball to first base. All that extra time. Also, to be clear, not everybody knows the pitchers and catchers report, Brandon. This is a film podcast. A lot of film nerds do not follow sports, so they do not know that. Yeah, I do start getting in the mood for baseball when it warms up. I am looking forward to it, and I think part of the appeal is it's for starters, it's generally the most accessible sport. The tickets are generally cheaper than football, basketball, and hockey. I think most people, whether they follow sports or not, know the rules of baseball. Like a lot of people played it as a kid, or watch, or had friends who played it, or watched, or you played it in the neighborhood. More than any other sport, there's a lot of life metaphors that get thrown, that are wrapped in baseball analogies. So I think it is kind of just baked into the fabric of our culture, I guess, and so. As the videos you sent illustrated, it's one of the better sports for filming, in a movie, because there's downtime between the action, and because there's so much dialogue on the field, and because you could see the players' faces and they're spaced out. It's better for actually, filming a movie. So I think all of those reasons play into it.
Some of the articles and whatnot, they talk about the nostalgia and the myths and magic that people shroud baseball in. And having been on a baseball field and having been on some really nice baseball fields, there's just something to me magical about that. I know you could probably say the thing about other outdoor sports if you really like them or are attracted to them. Soccer, I would imagine people that like soccer feel the same way about a soccer field, football field, and so on, with the exception of artificial turf because yuck. But I think baseball fields with the freshly cut grass and all that, it's just, I don't know. There's something that just gives me a chill being there.
Yeah, full disclosure with everybody, I played baseball from the young age of 7 all the way through college. And so baseball will always have a special place in my heart because it really did. Like I played it for so long. I coach it now at the high school level. I've been coaching it in various forms for the better part of the last 15 years. And I absolutely love the sport. And so naturally I'm drawn to any movie about the sport. It helps too, to Dad's point, the articles talk about how baseball has been built up as this basically like a mythological sport. There's so much about how it's baked into the fabric of American culture, but also like the feel-good stories that go along with it. It can be made to be funny, but at the same time, like you still enjoy the action on the field. Chris brought this up where there's enough time in between, and what that does with the time in between plays and between pitches, it helps to build the drama. And so this sport is perfectly situated as a cinematic experience.
Yeah. There are 3 movies that probably are at the top of my list, although as I showed you last night, there's a laundry list of movies that I really, really like. The top 3 probably would be Little Big League because it was just so much fun and it kind of made you feel like a kid. And seeing it through the eyes of a kid, you know, the game itself through the eyes of a kid. So I really enjoy Little Big League. The Sandlot because it brought back memories of childhood and playing in the Sandlot. I mean, we played baseball, football, basketball, you name it, in my neighborhood growing up. But the Sandlot really, really kind of brought back that feeling of playing in the park. And then to your point, Major League, which was just a fun movie about professional baseball, you know, and the Cleveland Indians at the time, which were doing very well and hadn't for a long time. But, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Big river.
Yes. So, yeah.
I particularly start with Major League because for me, that was probably the first baseball movie I sat still to watch from beginning to end.
Here's a list of the players we'll be inviting to camp.
I never heard of half of these guys, and the ones I do know are way past their prime.
Most of these guys never had a prime.
The facts are we lost our 2 best players to free agency. We haven't won a pennant in over 35 years. We haven't placed higher than 4th in the last 15. Obviously, it's time for some changes.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off, then.
I love the relationships between the players. They were rather hilarious, and at the same time, you can see those bonds forming, and that's something that as a player I miss the most is that locker room environment. I love that there's a struggle. They had different types of characters. They weren't all they were all baseball players, but what you noticed was they had all sorts of backgrounds. You had the rich free agent kid. You had the kid from jail that just showed up on the motorcycle. You had the guy that wasn't even invited to camp and they still didn't want, and now he's one of the biggest players on the team. And you had the guy who had been in the game for, decades and seemingly at the end of his career. All of those things are a part of a Major League Baseball team. And so that's the kind of stuff I enjoy watching. About the sport, at least when it comes to movies, that's the kind of things I enjoy, is that they deal with the action, but they very much deal with the interpersonal relationships.
One last one is Field of Dreams because of the way it made you feel. That one was really, really good in terms of getting under your skin, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Bro, you can't fall asleep. It may not be heaven, but it's Iowa.
It was a melatonin pill all up to itself. Jeez, boring.
If you build
as much of a snooze fest as it is to you, Chris, the thing for me with it is the playing catch with his father at the end.
Yeah.
And even though I no longer play catch with Dad where he hits me in the eye, leaving it black and blue and everything like he did on a visit to Texas once, throwing while his son wasn't paying attention. But anyways,
well,
it still was a wonderful
There's a lesson
experience.
there. Pay attention. But
yeah, for the person throwing too. Look before you throw. But I remember that with Field of Dreams, it gives me that nostalgic reminder of like being in the backyard at our old house. The number of times that we worked on pitching, or just playing catch even, or when you would take me to the field and we do those practices.
But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that on the favorite movies. I think Little Big League I think that movie kind of holds up because to me it captured a kid's perspective and an adult's perspective. I felt like I felt like it did a pretty good job at doing both of those things. Whereas to me, Rookie of the Year was, wouldn't it be cool if you could suddenly throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball or 95-mile-an-hour fastball and be in the big leagues when you're 12 years old? It's a premise appealing to kids, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like Little Big League could draw in more audiences, basically. So I like that one. Major League is, to me, the funniest baseball movie I've watched. The Summer Catch was enjoyable, and then The Sandlot is The Sandlot. I mean, The Sandlot is from a kid perspective, but I do feel like it captures. It makes people reminisce about their own upbringings, kind of, and it's because I don't even necessarily think it's dependent on you having played baseball as a kid. Just if you had kids, friends you hung out with, and the way you spent your summers, it's still translatable to that. So I think The Sandlot is definitely one of the better baseball movies of all time. And I think it's part of the reason baseball movies are the best sport for the best sport to have on film, is just because it's like you can play every day. Like and obviously in the big leagues you do play every day, which can make for, a very long season, if your team, for instance, loses the most games in MLB history, whatever team that was. It's a lot of games to play. It's a long season. So, but it's like you can have them on the field all the time.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too, in one of the articles that mentioned that there was a period, a decade, where there were a lot of baseball movies made, and then, obviously there were some before then and some after, but not quite as many. I didn't realize that so many baseball movies had been made, or released, I should say, between 1984 and 1994. That surprised me. And then as I was going through all the movies that I had on my list and I started putting years next to them, it was like, geez, yeah, they do seem to kind of most of them aggregate within that time period. Of course, there are some that were outside of that, but it is interesting that they had that one decade where there were a large number.
But what I love about these baseball movies, I feel it connects to my journey and the things that I love about the sport, depending on which experience we're talking about. For example, The Natural. Every kid has gone to the field and pretended like they hit the game-winning home run, some magical moment. And that home run by Roy Hobbs, that is what every kid is wanting to feel. Additionally, though, I think of a movie like Trouble with the Curve. And for me, I'm reminded of my conversations with my grandfather, who loved the sport of baseball. And when we would go down to visit him in Louisiana, or we'd give him a call throughout the season, and he would just share various feelings about it, various nuances about it. The man pitched, and he could manipulate a baseball in some sort of ways that I almost wonder if it was even legal, like the way he could make a ball spin and stuff. But when I watch Trouble with the Curve, I'm still reminded of those types of conversations with my grandfather. And then Summer Catch came out around the same time when I was in college.
What's going on? You okay?
I love her.
Oh. Okay, well, I love her too. But let's get 2 more outs, okay? Come on, kid, get up.
Hey, Knight, wake up, man. Get out of here.
Finish it, Calvin.
Come on, man. Hey, Augie, start the car.
Start the car. Says start the car.
Pete, get the cool. Let's start the car, man.
All right, let's start the car. Whoa.
Dude, what are you doing?
Look, Brew,
A no-hitter in the Cape League won't even be in the Globe tomorrow. Right, girl? That'll last you forever.
And so when I watch that movie, I'm reminded exactly when in life I was, where I was in my baseball journey at that time. And a lot of those experiences, they weren't copycats of those, but that's what a lot of those conversations and such were like when I was in college and in those younger years. So I say all this to say that it's really fun for me to watch all these movies because for me, it's almost traveling through my own personal history or giving me another chance at experiencing those things one last time. Even if they can't happen today, I still get the chance to feel them once again.
Yeah. Some of them are just plain fun. I mean, we talked about
Yes.
Major League and how funny it is, and others have that too. They have a nice mixture, I think, of humor and drama. Obviously because there's usually a big game or some rise throughout a season or something like that. Bull Durham, I thought was, it talked about some of the kind of troubles that people have, but it also was funny. I mean, to me, the funniest thing in that whole movie was when he when he set the pitcher up, the cocky young pitcher who wanted to assert his authority. It was like, gee, it's like you knew what I was throwing. He did. I told him. That to me is just like the funniest line in that entire movie. One of the articles put two movies against each other, Field of Dreams in terms of its nostalgia and things like that and how it, blows the game up in terms of, fantasy, and Moneyball as being the kind of antithesis of that. And I really didn't get that from Moneyball. That's kind of weird to me. I thought Moneyball fell in line with some of the romanticism and magic of it. You can't discount what he was saying. The classic line in there is, you can't help but feel romantic about baseball, and he said that several times. And I thought that, for what it's worth, it exposed the notion of how much money played in terms of putting rosters together and whatnot, and how they went against that and went with a lot of analytics in terms of putting together a team that could outperform that notion of it's all about money and star players. But I think it still held on a bit to the romantic part of baseball in terms of the catcher hitting the home run and not knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reluctant first baseman being a hero and hitting a home run at an opportune time in the game. So, yeah, I didn't really get that whole notion of it being the opposite of the nostalgia and whatnot.
Oh, they're laughing at him.
And Jeremy's about to find out why. Jeremy's about to realize that the ball went 60 feet over the fence. He hit a home run and didn't even realize it.
How can you not be romantic about baseball?
I find what interesting about the opening scene in Moneyball, when he's kind of listening to the conclusion of the series between the A's and the Yankees, and what kind of stuck out was, and I guess this is more specific to professional baseball, but just the way certain moments are magnified for some of these teams that don't spend as much money, and they might have one year where it's like, this is the year where we can actually go up against a big dog and we have a shot, and talent is equivalent or close to equivalent, because that and how much pressure there is on those specific moments, if they get to ruin it. The series in question happened 23 years ago, so sorry, but but the Yankees eliminate
no true story, so they can look that up.
Yeah,
the Yankees eliminate the A's. And it's, obviously Billy Beane's mad and throws his phone. And it's because he realizes he's about to lose some of his best players to the team that just beat him. And so, so I think, that's what stuck out to be about Moneyball, because, showing a baseball movie kind of from the GM's perspective, where he knows he's only got so many cracks at this, given his limited resources.
Yeah. Another interesting thing, when we watched it, it reminded me of something. It's not baseball, it was football. But the priorities of manager and GM don't always mesh in sports. And that to me stuck out in Moneyball as well, is that the manager's trying to win one way and the GM is trying to win another way.
Yeah, that movie was interesting with that relationship in particular, because it was very clear that, when Billy Bean's doing this, we're talking 20 years ago. So it was under this idea, this notion that you had to have superstars to win a game and you had to have mashers, and under the old metrics, batting average and ERA are the only things that determine, the outcome of anything. And he is introducing all of the new statistics that literally at the point of this movie are just now being introduced. And what I did was I watched Major League and Moneyball back to back, because I got the nostalgic reference and I got the idea that baseball is not the same. Once they turned the game to a much more analytical piece, it kind of lost a bit, in some people's minds, it kind of lost its relatability, because now we went so far into very complex, mathematical equations to start dictating what types of teams can be successful. What a player's value is no longer something so easily referenced and compared to somebody else. Like, I understand that the WAR metric is called for wins above replacement. Don't start me on trying to figure out how to explain how they come to that conclusion. Moneyball was showing us the transition of the sport from just the nostalgic piece to something a lot more difficult to explain for the average fan. But at the same time, to your point, and what I also felt watching this, is that you can still feel romantic about baseball.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting in Moneyball how they kind of went with the people that they had in the room that were trying to analyze talent, and how they had different opinions about what you need in order to put together a team that can win. And, that kind of back and forth I thought was kind of interesting in Moneyball. It sort of gave me a window into what scouts bring to the table and what the people that they have to convince the GM in order to get certain players up to the majors.
Yeah.
One thing I'll mention is, I don't know how many movies there are that do this, but A League of Their Own is the one that stands out that actually talked about women in baseball. And that was an enjoyable movie too, both for, I guess for the comedy and for the whole idea of this was actually a period in baseball that existed that probably a lot of people know little about.
Are you crying? No. Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
Why don't you leave her alone, Jimmy?
Oh, you zip it, Doris. Rogers Hornsby was my manager, and he called me a talking pile of pig shit. And that was when my parents drove all the way down from Michigan to see me play the game. And did I cry? No. No. And you know why? No. Because there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in baseball. No crying.
I also think with baseball movies, and you can see this a little in other sports movies too, but it's great to see, the athletes not be a monolith. You kind of have these different personalities and these different, and even in comedies, with Major League, it's like the players were a lot different. And, I think sometimes there's this tendency to kind of portray athletes as all, being philanderers or all being these, big spenders or whatever it is. And it's like some of them are driving really old cars. Some of them are, trying to reconnect with their, with their ex-fiance or their ex-wife. And, they weren't all the image of like a young, rich athlete who's just kind of living recklessly. So I think that's what's great about the baseball movies is, for starters, you have I think racial diversity in a sense, because there's and we know this from watching baseball today. You have players from Japan, you have players from from Latin America, from every which way, and you also have just differing personalities, and it's kind of important that they start to learn, that they learn each other, even if they don't really like each other that much, that they kind of learn each other and respect each other, because that chemistry is important, to your on-field success to some degree.
Yeah, bro, you're right. I think I think of, obviously we talked about Major League. I'm going to spin it over to Little Big League. And we talk about how ridiculous that locker room was. It's very diverse. It started with the shouting manager who had to be replaced because he wasn't respectful.
Hey, Blackout, come here.
Hey, what's up, Skip?
Let me explain something to you. I didn't trade for you for your curveball. I don't like your curveball. As a matter of fact, I hate your curveball. You want to know why?
Why?
Because the damn thing don't curve. Now, I'll make this real simple for you. When the guy behind the plate puts one finger down, you throw the ball as hard as you can. Understood, cement head? What the hell are you looking at? What are you doing? What are you doing? Well, then let's do it, okay?
You had all the guys looking at this kid now as their leader and going, what does he know? Only for him to prove that he knew much more than all of them. And then their own personalities. Some of them were absolutely dumb. They knew baseball and they didn't know anything else. I mean, being amazed that they speak Spanish in Venezuela is hilarious.
Yeah. Those kids.
But it was
That's
also
a hard language.
Right? And then the other thing too is, again, it's being this kid who's 12 turning 13 and he's still in school. So at some point the season gets to him going back to school and he's struggling with a math problem. So what do? They get the whole locker room to try and get this math problem correct. And I found that piece of this be really fun. The interesting deal with the relationship between the player and Billy's mom.
Yeah.
The fact that was going on, that was a fun dynamic. And then lastly, what I'll say is what's cool, again, with these baseball movies is how they end up connecting to real life, because I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm incorrect here, but isn't Pete Crow Armstrong, isn't his mom the one that's the mom in Little Big League?
Yeah.
And how crazy is that coming full circle? She does a baseball movie, and 30 years later, her son is now a big star in Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I enjoy all of those things. Here, because I know we try to be conscious about time, and we could talk about this literally on and on. We've done this at our dinner table, talked on and on and on about things like this. But I want to close out with this kind of question for you guys. The articles and the videos talk about how baseball movies had their height of popularity over that decade, like you mentioned, Dad. Mm-hmm. They kind of fell off because football has become America's most popular sport. I guess I'm kind of asking a twisted one here, but what do you think it'll take for us to get more baseball movies back into the fold? How can we go about doing that? And is there a specific type of baseball movie you would like to see them do next?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I was looking down my list at some of the others that were some on the inside, some on the outside of that time period. The ones on the outside of the time period seem to be more biopics in some ways. I mean, there's 42, 61. Those were in the 2000s and in the 2010s. Like you said, Trouble with the Curve came later as well. For types, hard to say. I thought Moneyball did a good job with their particular take on the game and how it was changing at the time. Major League was just a lot of fun in that you had a misfit team, that ultimately overcame and won the championship. I don't know if more of the same is necessary. I would like to see something with some sort of angle, some sort of twist about the game, some insight into the game, I guess, like Moneyball sort of did. And I'll give you a football-related one that was kind of along the same way. It was Draft Day. I thought draft day gave me an interesting insight into, football and the draft and whatnot. So maybe something along those lines as far as baseball is concerned.
Anything about the Negro Leagues I would watch, and I think I would be, because baseball is one of those things where it's so, they value their history and their tradition so much, and I think it's, it's an important thing to remember, like that there were segregated leagues, and there was an entire, almost another world essentially. And so it would, any insight we could get into that, I think would be great. The other thing is just, for for something genre related, I guess, gambling's infiltrated all the sports so much. We just had one of the best pitchers, one of the best bullpen pitchers in the game today. Just, we found out he was throwing meatballs in the playoffs to win bets or whatever it was. So it's any kind of, I don't know, any mystery thriller, conspiracy thriller about the relationship between baseball and gambling, and not saying gambling's limited to baseball, but something along those lines would also be an interesting watch.
For me, the next baseball movie I would like to see, and something that I think might really help, maybe even globally, for the appeal of this movie, would be something based off the World Baseball Classic. This year is going to be another version of it. It's coming along, and I think like creating a baseball movie where we get to see a lot of the interpersonal relationships from a bunch of different countries, I think that something like that, where we can see the relationships between each team, their love for their own country, as well as the interpersonal relationships of players against their opponents from those other countries. I just think that something like that would be really, really exciting. It'd be dramatic, and I think it also it's something that I think as a world we could use right now in terms of seeing that we can have harmony. So that would be the type of movie I'd like to see next.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because one movie we haven't mentioned yet, Mr. Baseball, kind of touched on that, the cultural differences between, American baseball and baseball played in Japan. I thought, it touched on that quite nicely, actually.
You did ask us how our idea of a movie would get made today. And we have talked about there being, a dearth of these movies recently. And I think we did a podcast on this and how the lack of licensing available, or the expensive licenses now, has, been an impediment to making these sports films. And I was thinking Moneyball, I think, was 2011.
Yeah.
And they used the Cleveland Indians and obviously then Oakland A's insignias, etc. So they were able to use that, and that, obviously lent authenticity to the film. And now with licensing being so expensive or just not available in some cases, how do you make a sports movie that also feels authentic if, you can't use the team's logos and names? So I'm not sure how you would do that today unless the franchises are willing to open those back up or make them affordable again. But that's why there's been such a dearth of sports movies, actually, recently.
I tend to think if there's any sport where the studios have a better shot, it would be baseball. It seems like the NFL seems like the most. I don't know why you'd even bother talking to them the way they way they would try to squeeze you. The last NBA movie I could think of that had a real team's name in it was Eddie. When the Knicks were in Eddie, and then I don't know about NHL movies, but it seems like if you have a shot with anything, it's baseball. Hopefully that's the case.
And you would think some of the smaller market teams would be open to it, right?
Right.
They need the money, right?
Right.
You would think, and that's why I was kind of gonna go that way too. I mean, the contracts at the big boys makes you think that baseball doesn't need the money, but overall, I think the sport I think Major League Baseball, the commissioner should sit down with the owners and have a very, very long discussion about this type of thing. Baseball used to be the most popular sport in America, and it's only going backwards. And they have made some good changes in the game to try and bring back the fans and all that kind of stuff. But something that really is a big help to that is the cinematic draw. I mean, how many fans of the Indians came about because of Major League? We saw how bad the franchise was. The movie, tugs at our heartstrings. It gave us a glimpse into what could be, and we started following the Indians a bit more. I'm still a Sox fan. I'm sorry, Cleveland. I'll never cheer for you winning a World Series, but that doesn't mean I don't find some joy in seeing that connection there. But I think the commissioner and the owners should sit down and talk about these licensing opportunities, because how do you bring the fans back? How do you make baseball the most popular sport again? I think they need to relax whatever licensing expectations they have, specific to movies or whatever, so that it can actually do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like what we were saying about baseball being, such a sport that values its history. A lot of these movies would probably be based on actual players or actual teams or actual events or seasons, and it's like, well, obviously we need to use the team name for that. It's really going to take people out of the movie if it's the Chicago Sharks or something like that. We're talking the 1919 Sharks scandal. It's like you kind of need the actual name of the team.
That's right.
So,
all you guys talked about, movies baseball movies specifically, that meant a lot to you as you were growing up, especially Brandon and Chris, obviously, as you were growing up, and how pivotal they were in the way you thought about baseball. And Brandon, for you, in addition to that, and even how you played the game or thought about the game or approached the game. And I would imagine it would be just as meaningful to young kids today who could see baseball on screen that way. And so I think the MLB is missing out on a great opportunity to just bring in just a huge slew of young fans to the game, frankly, boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say this one last thing. We were at dinner last night, and we briefly talked about baseball movies, and my niece and you guys' cousin talked about how she loved Little Big League. Mm. And so I think girls and boys would find these movies quite appealing, and they could bring in a slew of fans to the sport.
Yep.
I love that you brought that up, Mom. Bringing everybody into this sport. It's a beautiful sport.
Not to mention, it can also help to get back to increasing its diversity in terms of racial diversity anyway. I mean, Chris brought up the international diversity. There's certainly that there, but I would love to see more Black people brought into the sport because that has certainly shrunk.
Agreed.
And same for the kind of diversity that's exhibited in Yohan Moncada's jewelry. Like 4 different religions represented.
Bro, when you watch Moncada play, you see a bunch of different baseball numbers. To your point, you see so many different religious symbols. Sometimes I watch him and wonder if he's going to be in the next Mummy movie, like the one character that tries to recite from every religion. One of these gold chains is going to work. But I'd like to see one of the gold chains work so he can make it through a whole season and actually hit.
Jesus, Zeus, Buddha.
Man's got them all. And still can't hit a curveball.
I think I saw Voldemort on there. What? How many?
Thanks so much for listening to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. Honestly, we could go on and on like we do at our dinner table, but we appreciate you figuring out your cup of tea along with us. Make sure you rate and follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, leave a comment and tell us a story about your favorite baseball film. You can stay in the loop on all things COTC by subscribing on our website at cupofteacritiques.com. You can also find us on Facebook, check out our Instagram at Cup of Tea Critiques, and on Letterboxd at COT Critiques. For Reba, Terry, and Chris, I'm Brandon. We'll see you next time for another Deep Look with the Deep Blue.